What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today to break down my Week 12 wide receiver rankings tier list. Going to go through my top 40 wide receivers today. I'm going to be honest, the old format of going through every matchup talking about wide receiver starts and sits was getting a little bit stale, so we're going to decide to mix it up a little bit down for the rest of the season. For the final few weeks, we're going to go through my top 40 wide receiver rankings, as I mentioned. I'll cover the same stuff as usual. Wide receiver cornerback matchups, spreads, where the sharps are betting, all that good stuff. But instead of doing it in every matchup format, we're going to do it in rankings format so you guys can see who you should be starting and who you should be sitting over each other. So without further ado, if you guys enjoy, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new, comment down below what you think of the new format. If you like it, if you prefer the old one, let us know down below in the comments. But let's get right into it. All right, so you guys can see the matchup chart on the screen. You can see some of the easier matchups this week involve the Washington wide receivers, the Baltimore wide receivers, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in Seattle, the Dallas Cowboys wide receivers, which we saw yesterday against the Giants, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receivers, and then some of the more difficult matchups are Carolina with DJ Moore, Green Bay wide receivers, Chicago's wide receivers. The Vikings should have had a tough matchup last night, but Jefferson and Thielen were just fine. And then A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith with a bit of a tougher matchup this week as well. You guys can see also on the screen the projected shadow matchups this week. These are the shadow corners going up against some of our fantasy relevant wide receivers. Brandon Cooks is expected to see Xavier Howard from the Dolphins in shadow coverage. DJ Moore expected to see Patrick Surtain. Cortland Sutton expected to see CJ Henderson, although he's not very good, so that's not a big deal. And then Terry McLaurin expected to see AJ Terrell, Deontay Johnson against Stephon Gilmore. So the wide receiver tier list rankings, I will show you guys the final tier list at the end of the video. If you want to skip ahead and just look for your guy, go ahead and do that. But I encourage you to watch the entire video. We're going to start with the elite tier of wide receivers, the guys that are in your lineup no matter what. With these guys, I'm just going to keep it brief, talk about some, matchup stuff that might be relevant for them. This is more so if you're going to use this, it'd probably be for DFS, if anything else. But we do have in the elite tier, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, DeAndre Hopkins. These are ranked in order from left to right. So Stephon Diggs would be my wide receiver 1, etc. We saw big performances out of Stephon Diggs, out of Justin Jefferson, and out of CeeDee Lamb yesterday on Thanksgiving. Wide receiver 2 on the week is Tyreek Hill. The Dolphins are facing the Texans this week, 47-point total. 30.25 implied points to the Dolphins. They are 14-point favorites against the Texans. The Texans are solid against fantasy wide receivers in general, but they are 25th in pass defense DVOA, and a great offense like Miami has shown that they can beat up on bad teams no problem. Tyreek Hill is expected to see Tavir Thomas in coverage, who is allowing a 100% catch percentage in his limited snaps so far this season. That is not going to go well for him going against Tyreek Hill. Wide receiver 3 on the week for me is Devontae Adams. Another high total for us here, 47.5, 92% of the money is on the over as well. Devontae Adams with some difficult corner matchups against Tariq Woolen, who's played very well this year, the rookie corner for the Seattle Seahawks. But I'm expecting the Seahawks on the other side of this game to hang a number of points on the Raiders, which will probably cause the Raiders to have to throw the ball. So if they're playing from behind, we know that Devontae Adams is capable of getting, 10, 15 targets or whatever the case is. So I'd expect a lot of pass attempts out of the Las Vegas Raiders. Like I said, he's expected to see Tariq Woolen in coverage, who's been very solid this year, as well as the rest of the Seattle secondary. And then finally, to close out this tier, we have DeAndre Hopkins, who is my wide receiver 6 on the week, 48-point total. Also a pick 'em on a neutral field. The Cardinals are favored by, I believe, 3 points at home right now, but I probably would take the Chargers straight up. Worth noting that the Sharps love the over in this game. 99% of the cash is on the over. DeAndre Hopkins has double-digit targets in 4 of his last 5 games that he's played since returning from suspension. He's going to get Kyler Murray back for this game, so hopefully that is a spark for the Cardinals offense. But overall, I just want pieces from this game in general. Moving on to the next tier of wide receivers. These are the wide receiver 1s. They're probably in your lineup unless you're in a very, very shallow league and you might have multiple of these guys that you're deciding between. But this is how I have them ranked. A.J. Brown, Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, and Deebo Samuel. Wide receiver 7 on the week for me is A.J. Brown. We have the Eagles on Sunday Night Football versus the Green Bay Packers, an Eagles offense that's going through a little bit of a slump the last 2 games, but they should be able to pick things up. They face the 5th most difficult pass defense in the league with the Green Bay Packers. 46.5 point over under with most of the steam on the under in this game. AJ Brown's going to be just fine. I have no worries about him, but worth noting that the Eagles might struggle a little bit, at least out of the gate. AJ Brown is expected to see a combination of Rasul Douglas and Jair Alexander. They haven't shadowed Jair Alexander really much at all this year because him and Rasul Douglas are both playing well. So they don't really feel the need to just throw Jair on the number 1 wide receiver when both guys are playing at a high level. So him and Devontae Smith probably going to split time. Wide receiver 8 on the week for me is Jalen Waddle. Same rationale as Tyreek Hill, really. 30-point implied total for the Miami Dolphins. And I don't know about you guys, but the Dolphins offense really feels like one of the only offenses this year that we can count on to put up points, put up yards, put up, touchdowns each and every week. It feels like it's 2020 again, because overall this season scoring has been down, but the Dolphins feel like a, throwback to 2 years ago type of offense where they're just, whenever they play a bad team, they hang numbers on them. Whenever they play a good team, they're able to score points regardless. Waddle has 80+ yards in 4 of his last 5 games. Had a bit of a down week last week, but he should be good going forward. Like I said, he's going to split time between Tavir Thomas, who hasn't had a lot of experience this year, and Desmond King, who's been pretty good. So hopefully he gets some time on Tavir Thomas as well. Whoever is going to be on him in coverage, I would assume is going to get the ball on that play because he has not been very good at all. Wide receiver 9, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He played yesterday. He feasted 9 for 122 and 1. So definitely, hopefully, you had him in your lineup. Wide receiver 10 on the week for me is T. Higgins. And I have T. Higgins rated highest of the Bengals wide receivers right now, even though Jamar Chase is expected to play. Just being a tad cautious here, I expect Jamar Chase coming off of a multi-week absence that they might have him on some kind of pitch count. Not exactly sure how they're going to handle that situation. We might hear word that he will be on a pitch count or he won't be, limited whatsoever. In that case, I'll probably shift these Bengals wide receivers around a little bit. But it is a 43.5 point total with the over seeing 73% of the money. The Bengals have a pretty easy stretch of games over the next couple of weeks, and I think we could see big things from Burrow and company. The Titans defense is pretty solid, but I do expect T. Higgins to be able to get things done. Like I said, T. Higgins going up against a Titans secondary that has been, about average. You can see all the grades there in the 60s for the Titans corners, but overall not too concerning. Wide receiver 11 for me on the week is DK Metcalf, and I probably might even move this guy up towards the back half of the week this week. The Raiders are the single worst defense in the NFL in pass defense DVOA per Football Outsiders. The Seahawks are a top 5 offense, conversely, in explosive plays. So if you get a bad Raiders defense and a offense that is capable of beating you deep, beating you downfield, I think that is a perfect cocktail for a DK Metcalf explosion game. This game is getting steamed big time with a 47.5 point total. 92% of the money is on the over. DK Metcalf's primary matchup, Sam Webb, is allowing a 28% targets per route run, basically, on his coverage. So DK Metcalf could have a monster game this week. I'm expecting big things from the Seattle Seahawks. Geno Smith also highly rated in my quarterback rankings. Closing out the top 12 wide receivers, we have Mike Evans. The Bucs offense has been inconsistent this year, as we all know, but they look like they're starting to come together with Rachaad White running well on the ground. That's opening up things in the passing game. The Browns are a top 5 matchup for the Bucs wide receivers. They are terrible against the pass. Their corners have underperformed big time this year. Guys like Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward, who were really solid for them last year, have just not been the same type of players. It is a low point total in this game, 42.5. I think that speaks more to the Buccaneers defense being really good than it does to the Browns defense holding the Buccaneers offense. But nonetheless, the under is catching 68% of the steam. I do think Mike Evans has a good chance to get into the end zone in this game, get some targets. So I love him this week as a top 12 wide receiver. Wide receiver 13 for me is Terry McLaurin, the smash spot of all smash spots this week against the Atlanta Falcons. They are just the easiest pass defense in the entire NFL. We've seen them break slumps before for guys like DJ Moore on a couple occasions. However, their number 1 corner, AJ Terrell, is back now. He was back last week as well, and he is expected to shadow Terry McLaurin. This game is also not expected to be high scoring with a 40.5 point total. 62% of the money is on the under, but I'm still trusting Terry McLaurin nonetheless. He's been very good with Taylor Heineke. 5 straight games that Heineke has started. Terry McLaurin has seen 7+ targets, and of course, he's had some big games here and there as well. So I have, a high amount of faith that he's going to be able to get it done against AJ Terrell, who was very good last year. But so far this year, he's been dealing with injuries, hasn't been quite the same player. 68% catch percentage allowed, 1.2 yards per route covered. So wide receiver 14 on the week for me is Deebo Samuel. He finally got back on track this past week and scored on a big play run similar to what we saw from him last year in 2021. He was scoring on those type of runs all the time. 43-point total in this game with some cash on the over. 97% of the money is on the over in this game. I think this would probably be my lock of the week if I had to pick one. For which game do you think is a guaranteed going over? I think the Saints 49ers is absolutely going over. Neither of these defenses is playing at a high level right now. And both offenses, I mean, we know with the 49ers what they can do, but even the Saints offense, they're able to move the ball and score points no matter what. They played, pretty well against the Rams defense, who is generally a very talented unit last week. So I really love Deebo Samuel this week. We can move on to the next tier of wide receivers, which is the wide receiver 2s for me. We have Amari Cooper, Jamar Chase, Gabriel Davis, Tyler Lockett, Chris Olave, Keenan Allen, Christian Kirk, and Chris Godwin. A lot of Chris's in that tier. The Bucs pass defense is very difficult to throw on when they are healthy, which they are right now. They have Dean, they have Winfield, they have Carlton Davis, they have all their guys out there. Cooper has been great this season, but the thing about Amari Cooper that we have to remember is that usually when you can expect a down game coming, it's usually accurate. When you see him with a shadow coverage matchup or a good pass defense, it's usually something that we can rely on with Amari Cooper, which is something that is very good about him. J.C. Horn, A.J. Terrell, and Xavier Howard are the three corners that have shadowed him this year, and all three of those games just happen to be the three worst games that he's played. So I don't think they're going to shadow Dean or Davis necessarily on Amari Cooper because both guys are playing at a high level right now, but that makes it even more difficult because whatever side he's going to be on, he's probably going to be facing a very talented corner, and Jamel Dean is playing like an all-pro caliber corner this year. So not a great matchup for Amari Cooper, but overall he should be just fine from a target perspective. Wide receiver 16, like I said, is Jamar Chase. He will definitely move up if we hear reports that he's going to have no limitations, but I do expect them to ramp him up to some degree, coming back off of a multi-week injury. He's expected to play, according to Joe Burrow. He said that earlier in the week. I think keeping him in mind as like a wide receiver 2 rather than like the high-end wide receiver 1 that we know he is when he's healthy is probably smart. So if you guys have a Terry McLaurin, if you guys have a Mike Evans, swap him out for Jamar Chase in your lineup, because I do think you're playing with some risk there that Jamar Chase is on a pitch count, especially against a solid pass defense like they're playing against the Tennessee Titans. He had 3 straight games of double-digit targets pre-injury, so as long as he's back to full health, he should be just fine. But overall, we got to monitor reports on Jamar Chase. Wide receiver 17 played yesterday was Gabriel Davis, had a down week, 4 for 38. For everybody that gets mad at me every time I say that Gabriel Davis is a wide receiver 3, the guy has 4 games of 10-plus PPR points this year with a monster 30-point game and 6 games with less than 10 PPR points. So he absolutely is a wide receiver 3, boomer bust type of option, especially when the Buffalo Bills are not playing quite to the highest level, which they haven't been in recent weeks. I don't think you can see Gabriel Davis as anything more than, a mid wide receiver 2 in a good matchup, back end wide receiver 2 in a bad one. So wide receiver 18 for me is Tyler Lockett. 3 straight games with a touchdown. Hasn't put up a ton of yardage this season, but as I said for Metcalf, just an absolutely juicy matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. So I love Tyler Lockett this week. Chris Olave is my wide receiver 19. Somehow Chris Olave still remains underrated this year. I think if Olave went to another team in the NFL draft, if he went to like the Packers or the Titans or the Chargers or some team that could actually throw a deep ball to save their lives, we might be talking about another Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase caliber rookie season, because Chris Olave has been missed on so many big plays this year. And like I said, the Sharps love the over in this game, as do I. Neither defense is impenetrable, and the Saints can move the ball pretty well on offense. So I like Chris Olave this week as well. There's some player props on him for his hire that I really like as well. Wide receiver 20 on the week for me is Keenan Allen. One of the first times I've been able to say all season that Keenan Allen practiced in full this week. Keenan Allen has finally recovered from this hamstring injury that has marred his entire season. He came back and he had nearly 100 yards last week on Sunday Night Football. He had 8 targets right away, and he gets a Cardinals defense that ranks 22nd in DVOA, fresh off of a shellacking from the San Francisco 49ers Yak Bros. The slot corner charged with covering Keenan Allen is actually linebacker Isaiah Simmons. So if that's actually how the matchups play out, I think Keenan Allen will absolutely have a field day in this one. I love his receiving yards. If you guys are doing some player props as well, like the hire on him. Wide receiver 21, we have Christian Kirk. Might have the toughest matchup in store for Christian Kirk in a while. This game isn't expected to be super high scoring, 43.5 points on the game. Christian Kirk sees rookie safety / slot corner Kyle Hamilton, who is posting an elite 89.0 PFF grade this season. I expect Kyle Hamilton to probably keep Christian Kirk in check. I think Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Marvin Jones, and Zay Jones and Evan Ingram will have to be the way that they win this game. I don't think Christian Kirk is going to have a phenomenal game this week, but he is a high target share receiver for an offense that throws the ball a lot. So I do have to rank him a little bit higher. I might move him down after this now talking through it. Wide receiver 22 on the week for me is Chris Godwin. Between him and Mike Evans, Evans probably has a leg up, seeing as the outside corners have played poorly for the Cleveland Browns. But either way, Chris Godwin has seen 10 or more targets in 5 of the 7 games that he's played since returning from the injury he suffered in week 1. And he has never seen less than 6 targets in a single game. Finally saw the end zone in Germany right before the bye. So hopefully he's starting to get some rest, starting to get healthy. And if we can get a fully healthy Chris Godwin, he could absolutely win people leagues down the stretch, because we've seen what he can do from a target share standpoint. If he gets that explosiveness back, watch out, because he could definitely be great. So, all right, before we get into the next set of wide receivers, we got to hear from a word from our sponsors over at Manscaped. And today, as I'm recording this, is Black Friday. They're going to have 25% off site-wide the entire weekend, and you guys will be hearing that message right now.
Hey lads, today's episode is brought to you by our sponsors over at Manscaped, the leaders in male grooming across the globe. This holiday season, I'll be giving thanks to our friends over at Manscaped. Everyone loves turkey and stuffing, but you'll be looking like dessert with the help of Manscaped's Performance Package 4.0. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming have blessed you with the ultimate reason to be thankful. Trim your pumpkins by going to manscaped.com and use code BUSH for free shipping and 20% off. Think your holiday spread is good? It's time to give thanks to Manscaped Performance Package 4.0, or as I like to call it, the perfect package for your package. Inside, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. Think of it as a cornucopia for your balls. Their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. It also gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave, plus it's waterproof. The Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker. Chop your worst weeds up top in your nose and ear. This nose and ear hair trimmer uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual-blade system to provide proprietary skin-safe technology which helps prevent nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate holes of yours. You also can't forget Manscaped's liquid formulations. The Crop Preserver ball deodorant and Crop Reviver toner spray are like the pumpkin pie and ice cream after a nice Thanksgiving dinner. You guys can't live without it. Your balls will be living in turkey heaven with these formulations. And if this wasn't enough, it's time to do the dishes with Manscaped shower products. Lather some of Manscaped's refined body wash on their brand new signature body buffer. Give yourself the lather and rinse your body deserves. Lose the loofah and exfoliate those mates. This fall, it's time to join 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use promo code BUSH for 20% off plus free shipping. Again, 20% off plus free shipping with code BUSH at Manscaped. Manscaped gives your manhood the proper treatment it deserves. We appreciate the support for the Fantasy Stock Exchange over by our friends at Manscaped and thank them for sponsoring today's video. And speaking of that video, let's get right back to it.
Moving on to the wide receiver 2-3 Fringe. And I'll try and speed through these guys a little bit faster than I already did. Leave a like down below if you guys are already enjoying. Subscribe to the channel if you feel like you got some value. But we can start off with Michael Pittman Jr., Brandon Ayuk, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, Jacoby Myers, Cortland Sutton, and Drake London. Wide receiver 23 on the week for me is Michael Pittman Jr. Not a great game environment for this Monday Night Football game. 39-point over-under with the Sharps taking mostly the under at 63% of the money. Not a ton to look forward to, although Matt Ryan has posted some of his best games of the year in recent weeks. Steelers defense is pretty much reinvigorated right now with TJ Watt back on the field. They've been a lot stingier since his return as well, so definitely something to keep in mind for Indianapolis. Wide receiver 24 on the week for me is Brandon Ayuk. He finally had a down game on Monday. Finally, some of the production went to George Kittle and it went to Deebo Samuel, but that's pretty much all that happened in that game. He could have easily had a big game in that one. It just happened that Kittle and Deebo Samuel had the big games. This is a great spot for the 49ers offense and Brandon Ayuk to hang some points on a terrible Saints defense. You guys can see all their defensive grades on the screen right now. Their corners are awful. And even if Marshawn Lattimore is back for this game, I'm still expecting a down performance secondary-wise from the New Orleans Saints. So a big time game incoming for the 49ers passing game. Wide receiver 25 is Garrett Wilson for me. And you guys know I was a Zach Wilson truther, but even I am happy as hell to see Mike White in at quarterback for the sake of Garrett Wilson, for the sake of Elijah Moore, because this dude has been unbelievable all year. If he was on a better passing offense, we'd be seeing it. He has a 22% target share, 38% of his team's end zone targets. It's a very low total in this game, 38.5, with the under catching 82% of the cash right now. But I think we're probably going to get more points than this. Justin Fields is expected to play. I expect this Jets passing game to wake up a little bit now that Mike White is in at quarterback. I also know that the Bears games have hit the over in 5 straight weeks. So the fact that you're getting a 38.5 point total here and the Bears defense has been pretty much the worst in the the NFL since they traded away Roquan Smith and since they traded away Robert Quinn. I really, really love the over this week. This is another one of those games that I think is just a lock to basically happen. So moving on to the wide receiver 26 is Devontae Smith. He wasn't terrible last week. I actually picked him as my Manscaped going nuts player of the week. Didn't necessarily get there. Considering the lack of offense in Philadelphia the last 2 games, I think he's been just fine. Love them in this spot again. The Packers have allowed 24 points in 7 of their last 8 games this year. So I think the Eagles should be able to get back on track. Combination of the running and passing game. Devontae Smith in a pretty good spot. My wide receiver 27, Jacoby Myers, played actually yesterday. Only had 3 for 62 on the day, but he did miss a lot of snaps dealing with a shoulder injury he suffered on his first catch. Wide receiver 28 for me on the week is Courtland Sutton. And PFF, like I said, is actually expecting CJ Henderson to shadow Courtland Sutton, which sounds bad, but it's actually great because it keeps him away from JC Horn, who is actually the only good corner on the Carolina Panthers. This game has a absolutely drizzly 36-point total, though, with a battle of the 32nd ranked offense in the Denver Broncos versus Sam Darnold in his first start of the year. So not a good game overall environment for Courtland Sutton. If you don't have to play him, I suggest you don't. All the guys that I've mentioned already, you could play ahead of him. Wide receiver 29, we have Drake London. I think it's kind of interesting to see what happens with Drake London this week because we now have Kyle Pitts on IR. He's probably going to be out for the rest of the year. The Commanders are not an easy defense to run against, so I don't think that the Falcons' agenda of just like running the ball every play is going to fly in this game. They're going to have to throw if they want to win. Worth noting also that all of Mariota's highest passing game totals and his highest passing outputs have come against pass funnel defenses like the Washington Commanders are. So I do think we could see some more pass attempts in this game. Drake London, another guy who has been absolutely outstanding this year. He just can't get a ton of opportunities because number one, his offense barely throws the ball. And number two, his quarterback can't hit the broadside of a barn. So Drake London, a guy that I think can get back on track this week. I'm just going to really speed through these wide receiver 3s. These are my wide receiver 30 to wide receiver 40 to close out the video. Wide receiver 30 and 31, because I'm a coward, I ranked both Green Bay Packers wide receivers back to back. Allen Lazard and Christian Watson. Both of these guys are fine flex options. Lazard seems to have the matchup advantage here versus Josiah Scott in the slot. Christian Watson with the tough outside corners. He's also been very touchdown reliant as well. And I think the Eagles are a good enough pass defense that they can limit that. But Randall Cobb is also a sneaky, addition to this offense because he's helped them move the ball better, but he is taking targets away from the other two guys. So definitely an interesting dynamic there. Wide receiver 32 for me is Josh Palmer. Mike Williams hasn't practiced all week. You can roll Palmer out there as a wide receiver 3 option against a brutal pass defense and what I expect to be a high scoring game, as I mentioned. Wide receiver 33 for me is Curtis Samuel. The Falcons secondary stinks, so he's a fine start as well. Also think if you're completely desperate, Jahan Dotson's not a terrible start. Also, wide receiver 34, Treylon Burks had a breakout game this week. He still wasn't quite fully on the field for the full complement of routes. He only ran 68% of the Titans routes last Thursday night against the Packers, but a 38% targets per route run. His first career 100-yard game, that ought to get him some more playing time as the clear best receiver on this Tennessee Titans team. And if the Bengals are able to put up points in offense on the other side of the ball, I think the Titans will have to throw quite a bit in this game. Wide receiver 35 for me is DJ Moore. He definitely sees a downgrade because he's getting shadow coverage from probably an all-pro caliber corner this year in Patrick Surtain. So definitely downgrading him. And again, 36-point over-under in that game. Sam Darnold starting. Not exactly sure what we're getting out of DJ Moore, but he is a fine, low-end flex piece if you need to. Wide receiver 36 and wide receiver 39 for me are George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. Shadow coverage coming for Deontay Johnson. Apparently, according to PFF, Deontay Johnson has been viewed as the number 1 wide receiver from previous shadow corners, and Stephon Gilmore has been shadowing wide receivers opposing number 1. So definitely a big bump for George Pickens if Deontay Johnson is taken right out of this game by Stephon Gilmore. Could be a sneaky spot for him. If you guys are playing, Monday night DFS or something, I think he could definitely be a great, team captain to throw into your lineup or whatever. Wide receiver 37, we have Tyler Boyd, still a viable flex option this week, even with Jamar Chase probably coming back. If Jamar Chase is on a pitch count or he's ruled out of this game or whatever the case is, then I think that you can move Tyler Boyd all the way up to like the Drake London range, the Devontae Smith range, if not a little bit higher than that. And then wide receiver 38 for me was Darius Slayton, who played yesterday, 6 targets, 3 receptions, 63 yards, 0 touchdowns. Not a huge game for him there. Wide receiver 39, as I mentioned, was Deontay Johnson. And then wide receiver 40 to close out the video is Allen Robinson. He saw some solid targets against the New Orleans Saints last week, and the Chiefs are pretty bad. They're the 29th ranked defense against fantasy wide receivers and adjusted fantasy points allowed. So I think you could definitely do worse in your flex option than Allen Robinson, but the Rams are just a stinky, stinky offense overall. So I don't really want to trust anybody involved in that offense. So let me know. This is the end of the video. Let me know what you guys thought of this format. Did you like this better? Does this help you more with your start sit decisions? Because I'm actually giving you the rankings. If you guys want access to our full weekly rankings, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, you can get them via Patreon, link down below in the pinned comment. But that is my top 40 wide receivers for week 12. Figured this might be more helpful than seeing the usage at this point because it's week 12. We kind of know what these players are. Let me know what you guys thought down below in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Like I said, check out the Patreon if you want access to more fantasy football content. But with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.
Why you need